So, translations are out from My Hero Academia, Manga Chapter 301, and let me just say this, or should I say, sing this. It's a Todoroki flashback arc. I don't know why I decided to sing it, but I did. Yeah, we're getting a Todoroki flashback arc. Let's get into it after this intro. Hit it! Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Big Blue Drew 97 here, coming at you with another manga review for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 301, titled Give Me a Moment. I forgot what the title of this chapter is. I'm so prepared for this review, obviously. Yes. Careless Handling of Fire, first part, or part 1. So yes, with that title and what I said in the intro, for the most part when it comes to this chapter, we are getting another Todoroki flashback, but this time we're starting from the beginning of how the Todoroki family came into be and why they are so dysfunctional and why Dabi is evil and everything and blah 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 blah. But yeah, hopefully you're going to enjoy this, but before we get right into the review, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't done so, to subscribe to my YouTube channel if you like to see these reviews and manga reactions and all that cool jazz. Just subscribe to this YouTube channel and leave likes and comments down below so that you can get more notifications for them, as well as hit that little bell. And without the way, let's get right into the review. So, for starters, most of this chapter, and by most I mean pretty much all of it, is going to be focusing on the Todoroki family. Inji, we got Rei, we got Natsu, we got Fuyumi, we got Shoto, and even Dabi / Toya. So we're going to have a lot of focus, mainly within the flashback. But even when it comes to the first part of this chapter, it's not necessarily, it is a flashback because this has already occurred, but we're getting better context and understanding of like how Rei and how Inji met, because the first few pages are basically them discussing that, oh yeah, we're so happy that specifically when it comes to Rei's family, how they're so happy that she's going to be marrying with Endeavor, who is like perceived at this moment to be the top candidate for the #1 position, and how they're very happy to have a hero within their prestigious family. And then we get dialogue and understanding of like how Rei, even though she knew that this was a quirk marriage, and we see that even though Endeavor wanted this, he wasn't like the one pushing for it. It was more of like a mutual thing between him and Rei's like family to give them more prestige. But even then, Inji realized that there was something different about Rei, and how when it comes to her perception, she understood the situation normally, and that she got into the marriage for her family, but that he realized that there was something different about her, that even though she always has this cool and cold demeanor and she always looks cool, that if he touched her, that he thought that was melt. So we get a little bit understanding of like how he perceived her, and he just didn't perceive her as, oh yeah, this is just someone who's going to be bearing my children, that he may have like understood her a little bit more than we really thought at the beginning. As we cut over to the present once again, where we see that both Rei and Inji are now talking to each other, and that Inji is very surprised to see her. So, like I said, we cut over to the present, where we see that Inji and Rei are talking, and Inji is just very confused about why is he here, if she's okay, and she's like, yeah, the reason why, and Rei's like, yeah, the reason why I'm here is because our family isn't okay. As from there, we actually cut over to Dabi as he realizes that he has burned himself even more, and that he comes to this conclusion that, yeah, I know that the flames that I hit Dad with were not enough to kill him. I should know more than anyone else. But that now Dabi's just waiting for Endeavor to face the public, and he's really ready to see the despair on his face, to see him own up to like everything that Dabi has said, and how he wants to see that expression as he begins to think about his family members. While he's thinking about this, he's thinking of Inji Todoroki, he's thinking of his mom, he's thinking of Fuyumi-chan and Natsu-kun and Shoto, and how he's telling them to watch him in the pits of hell. And something interesting that I want to bring up at this point, like when it comes to these My Hero reviews, a lot of them are based off of the initial translations, not off the official chapter. But something interesting is if this part is translated correctly, it's very interesting to see how he names off the family members, specifically of the Todoroki family, because he calls Inji Todoroki, as Inji Todoroki. He doesn't call him his dad, he doesn't call him his father, but he calls his mom Rei mom. He calls Fuyumi Fuyumi-chan. He calls Natsu Natsu-kun, and he addresses Shoto as just Shoto. And this would be very interesting because it means that he still has some type of familiar connection to his mother Rei, to his older, to his younger, his second youngest, not second, oh gosh, to his sister, as well as to his first, second, I don't know how to put this, Natsu. He still has like familiar connections with them, but that yet he addresses his father and Shoto by their first name, which is, in the context of like Japanese culture and just in general, that seems very odd. And I think that it shows that he's like at the most part showing resentment or disconnecting them from his family, from his feelings, so that he can hurt them the most. Meaning that at the very least, he's not here to hurt any of his family, specifically Rei, Natsu, and Fuyumi, but he's doing it specifically to hurt Shoto and Inji, which later on in this chapter we can see like where that hatred for Shoto began. But from here, this is where we get into the more proper flashback of the Todoroki family. We start into the flashback where we actually get to see more of a young Toya who's mad and he's agitated because he's talking to his father. He's like, "Dad, what are you doing? We want to train. You're off today, so why aren't you training?" Where we see Endeavor is just brushing him off and is like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go. Yeah, it's fine. Just be good." As we cut over to a doctor in a hospital, we're basically getting more context for, even though the last time we saw Endeavor Inji in a flashback, he was so hopeful for his son, why, even though he had all this hope, why he thought that his son could surpass All Might, why he eventually decided to continue like having children, eventually leading to Shoto, where we get more of the confirmation about how Toya's like genetics function because of his mother and his father, where the doctor basically straight up says like, yeah, Toya has Endeavor's firepower, but has the genes of Rei, basically meaning that Toya has affinity for ice, but not for, even though he can use fire. Basically, if you were to put it into resistant terms, Toya has a natural resistance to ice, but he uses fire. And because of that, it burns his body. And so yeah, the doctor basically says that, yeah, Toya, yeah, his quirk doesn't match his body, which is very interesting because this is the first case of seeing a person's quirk not mix well with their body, because he also have Ayama, who, even though he has a laser navel, it causes harm to his body ever since he was born, which is why he wears the belt. So it shows that this type of idea is very like, it is very possible to happen in this world, and it has happened to Toya. And something else the doctor also brings up is that, yeah, also, you know, like when it comes to quote unquote designing children, yeah, it's very taboo in this age of quirks, meaning that the doctor does know what they're trying to accomplish with fire and ice, but because he's a doctor, most likely he can't just like tell everyone about it because of patient-doctor confidentiality. But this is very interesting because this realization and this piece of information probably now has pushed Endeavor to the greater extremes, because like I said, a few chapters ago we got the realization that Endeavor put all of his hopes into Toya, but at this moment all of those hopes become dashed. And because of that, Toya now does not have the capability of surpassing All Might as the #1 hero. And I think this is the beginning of Endeavor beginning to break away from just his family being viewed as family, as we also cut over to Toya himself talking to Fuyumi. And we have both Fuyumi as well as Toya talking to each other, and something interesting I like is that Fuyumi refers to herself in the third person. She's like, but Fuyumi doesn't like seeing Toya in harm. But this is something very interesting because at this moment Toya realizes that his power is harming him and that he understands his body most, so he's still going to be using his quirk even though it knows that he hurts him, because he wants to be what his father wants him to be. He wants to be someone that surpasses All Might, and that the reason why he wants that is because of what his father has done. He has pushed Toya to this point to want to surpass Endeavor, which comes to a head in this chapter with a confrontation between Endeavor and Toya. And then we cut to a very impactful part of this chapter where we get Rei and Inji Todoroki talking about the condition of their son Toya, where we get a sort of confirmation for why Endeavor actually want to have more and more children, because Rei and Inji are basically talking about how it is cruel of what they're doing, that Toya understands what Endeavor wants from the children, but Endeavor's like, yo, I've been trying to tell him all this time, and this is the only choice we have, where he confirms that Toya can't surpass him. Basically, they're talking about having more children to try and convince Toya that he cannot become a hero. And you may be thinking like, oh, that just seems like Endeavor's selfishness. Yes, but it's also for the benefit of Toya is what they're talking about, because they realize that, yeah, Toya, he still wants to be a hero, but he physically can't because it's actually killing him. His quirk is actually doing harm to them, and that's something that both Toya knows as well as Endeavor knows, as we get this entire page of Toya looking at that his brother Natsu is born, and as we see Endeavor's like will to be the number one hero beginning to twist more into anger, as we see his face becoming angry, as Rei is becoming more concerned, as we finally get the birth of the prodigal son Shoto Todoroki. And something very interesting is that everyone sees this. Inji, Rei, and Toya sees that Shoto is crying. He sees that Shoto's hair is half black and half white. And I think this is very interesting, because I think that this kind of confirms that the quirk of Fire and Ice is directly tied to hair color. Because we know that Fuyumi can control ice, most likely Natsu can control ice, but Toya can control fire, but because his hair went from black to white, it directly shows that he is more of Rei's genes, which is ice, even though that he can use firepower. And they could have put this together that, okay, this child right now, we don't have to have any more children because he's half fire, half ice, or specifically his hair is half white, half black, meaning that most likely, as soon as he was born, they were like, okay, he can use fire and ice. And this is very interesting because it shows like how like quirks, like this is like indirectly telling us like how the quirk genetics works in My Hero Academia, and how there may be certain tales that can help you determine whether or not a particular child, if they have like the ability to inherit the parents' quirks, if they actually did. So that's very cool, and a little bit more of slight context to that. But with the birth of Shoto comes something else that boils in Toya in his mind, because we cut over to Toya practicing his firepower. From the last time that we saw him, more of his hair is turning white, as he's like, all right, I can do it, Dad. I'm practicing. Just look at me, Dad. I can do this. Look at my flames. They're hot. They're burning fire. I can do this. As we get to see that his face is beginning to distort a little bit, as we cut over to where Endeavor is basically telling his own son that, yeah, you're getting burnt. You cannot surpass Endeavor, Toya. Just forget all of this. Like, just go play with the kids. Don't do anything else. Just go outside. Just don't be a hero. Just understand this. And Toya just can't understand it. His father is telling him that he shouldn't do what he wants. And what is even more worse is that he talks about how, but you're telling me not to be a hero, but like everyone in school wants to be a hero, and there's no way that you can understand. Like, I'm your son, Dad. You pushed me to be a hero, so I want to be a hero, but now you're telling me not to, but I have to. Like, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm... We see Toya break. We see Toya break, and you can see as he's talking, the gears begin to turn, and then they stop, and then they break. And that breaking point is probably the moment where he realizes that, yeah, look at me, as he calls his father, instead of Toya, Inji Todoroki, he calls him Endeavor, saying to look at me, as he lunges at Shoto with his fire, as in the chapter with Rei mentioning that, yeah, the one that is most in pain isn't you, and you weren't the only one that refused to look at that child. And if this line is translated correctly, this has a lot of implications for how Rei is also a reason why Toya Dabi is the way that he is. So yeah, a lot of things happen in this chapter. Like I said, this is basically a flashback chapter for the Todoroki family, and there's like a lot of things that really happened. We got to see just really like how Rei and Inji really like kind of felt about each other at the beginning, specifically on Indy's side, and really how we thought that, oh yeah, this is just a forced marriage by Endeavor, but it was actually more of a mutual thing. So that was a little bit more confirmation, which we got in this chapter, as well as just getting more like context and like really a different side to the argument of Endeavor and Ray's relationship and the reasoning why Endeavor wanted so many kids. Sure, he wanted someone to surpass in All Might, but then he had it with his first son. He's like, oh, this firepower could surpass All Might, but he had just one crucial flaw. And that one crucial flaw with everything that Endeavor has done to his child indirectly meant that he was unable to achieve that #1 status. But the problem with that would have been that because that Endeavor like instilled that into him as a kid, that there was no way that Toya would have not tried to achieve that goal, meant that he would have been killing himself in the process, probably could have killed himself if he used his fire too much. And that the reason why Endeavor wanted to have more kids to be a way of convincing Toya to stop. So that's very interesting, because that shows a different side to why Endeavor wanted children. It wasn't just solely to find an heir that could surpass #1 and that all of his children were deemed failures, but that he did it as a way to prevent one of his children from going down like a gruesome path, which unfortunately he still did, even to the point of attacking his own mother. And that's a point that I really want to bring up, because this could bring a different layer to the first Todoroki flashback, the first Shoto flashback that we got, where if you remember correctly, and I went back and looked at it just in case, Ray is talking to her mother right before he throws the hot water on Shoto, and she brings up about how she cannot raise him anymore, and we're thinking that that is referring to Shoto, but maybe it was actually referring to Toya himself, because as you can see in the panel, Shoto kind of looks like a younger Toya, and maybe by doing so, throwing the water on him could be representing this point where her own son attacked her. And let's be honest, if you see that your child tries to kill you, you may not want to raise them. So that could put a different context and a different layer on a previous flashback that we had, giving it a different side to it, and showing that even though Endeavor may not have been the best at all, and what the things that he did were bad, that Ray was also a part of it, that she wasn't completely innocent. She did throw boiling water on her son, but also she did play a part in why Toya is the way that he is, and it isn't solely the fault of Endeavor. It does not mean that Endeavor didn't play a part, it's just that he wasn't the only part to it. So just getting a better understanding of what led Toya to become Dabi in this chapter, most likely we're going to get more of that, if not next chapter, eventually in the future. And it's just cool to see how this family dynamic began to warp more and more, and how this warping wasn't just Endeavor himself, but just like this obsession with All Might, and how this obsession was not just something that Endeavor had, but was eventually influenced and eventually became a part of Toya, where he also became that type of obsessiveness, but not for All Might, but to want to please his father and be what his father wanted. And once he was unable to do so, he cracked. So yeah, there's a lot to really talk about in this chapter, and I've only scratched the surface of it, but hopefully you enjoyed this review. Hopefully you enjoyed me talking about this chapter, talking about everything that happened. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a like down below, leave a comment on what you thought of this chapter. What do you think about the Todoroki flashback? What do you think is going to happen next chapter? Because based off the title where it talks about the first part, most likely there's going to be hopefully a second part, which means that we're going to be continuing down this train of flashback after flashback after flashback, which, I mean, I'm fine with it. Like, we rarely get like entire arcs in My Hero Academia like based in flashback. So I think this is going to be very interesting. This is going to be some new form of territory that we haven't really like dived into in My Hero Academia. So most likely we're going to see another flashback, more of like how Toya like was able to get over the situation, and we may even get context to like Fuyumi and Natsu and Toya. That scene of them playing, we may see that, oh yeah, they're having fun, and Toya's like, oh yeah, I'm having fun, but deep down he's like, yo, I'm gonna freaking kill Shoto. So we may even get a different like light on Shoto's life before the incident with his mother. So yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments down below, leave a like on this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, do all of that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next My Hero Academia review. So until then, catch you guys later, bye!